Sheepies, Sid here with another episode of Do Talking to Me's Scooby-Doo's Day. This time I'll be talking about Scooby-Doo Where Are You episode 13, Which Witch is Which?
Look, it's the witch and her creepy crony.
Come on, let's follow them.
This may surprise you with that title, but this episode involves a witch. But the witch honestly isn't the main draw of this show, but I'll get to that later. The episode begins after the gang returns home from a fruitless, or should I say fishless, fishing trip, and they decide to take the creepiest shortcut imaginable through the sketchiest part of the darkest backwoods swamp on the face of the earth.
Hey, Shaggy, what kind of a creepy shortcut is Freddy taking?
This is the kind of location I love to see in a Scooby-Doo episode, a place that would genuinely be terrifying to find yourself in, that feels as far from civilization as humanly possible. It's the place that would be the perfect setting for a horror movie today, but because the Scooby Gang is so vibrant and colorful, it doesn't feel dangerous. It's like a security blanket for kids watching the show.
Well, I didn't know it ran through such a spooky swamp.
You mean this is the first time you've ever taken it?
On this dark night, the gang encounters the real draw of this episode, a f***ing zombie.
Zombie! Zombie?
This episode came out a year after Night of the Living Dead, and I choose to believe a zombie was used in this episode because of that movie just coming out. Of course, the zombie is much more of a traditional take on a zombie, brought to life through magic by a witch living in the swamp, though, you know, you usually think of witch doctors being associated with zombies, but the original Scooby-Doo series has 2 witch doctors, so I guess for this episode, they decided they didn't want another witch with a doctorate.
Demon of evil, take the form of the living.
The zombie is one of the most iconic villains of Scooby-Doo, even though he's not really much of a threatening presence. He just looks cool. The witch is kind of like the Emperor to the zombie's Darth Vader, and Darth Vader sells a lot more merch despite being second in command. The zombie actually looks like Michael Berryman if he was green. After the gang encounters the zombie, they retreat to the nearby town of Swamp's End, a desolate ramshackle place that looks none too inviting itself. It's in the gang's nature to investigate this seemingly supernatural phenomena, and the owner of the local general store, Zeke, fills them in on the witch and zombie backstories, but essentially the other citizens of Swamp's End have vacated the place, fearing a curse, leaving only Zeke and his unseen partner Zeb as the sole residents of the village.
Zeb and me are the only ones left.
Which means that this episode has only 2 suspects, and coincidentally there are 2 monsters in this episode, but of course there's always the possibility that the witch and the zombie could be the real deal, right? Shaggy and Scooby try to reach out to Zeb, but instead find a voodoo doll, which is a doubling down on the older mythology of zombies.
It's a voodoo doll that looks like him.
Voodoo dolls are even found bearing striking resemblances to the gang, though they aren't actually functional, so their purpose of scaring the gang isn't very clear unless the witch was just planning to open up an Etsy shop to sell Scooby merch on.
Yo! I've been voodooed!
Hold it, Shaggy.
The witch's lair itself has a Haitian look to it, making the episode's influences pretty clear, but the witch herself has nothing Haitian about her at all. She's just a standard witch you'd find as a Halloween decoration on someone's lawn. Of course, the Scooby Gang weren't globetrotters yet, so I suppose it wouldn't have made sense to have a full-on voodoo witch doctor living in America. The look of the swamp in this episode is again impeccable. There's just something so unsettling about seeing a sign with a human skull on top of it in a kid's show. The episode itself isn't the strongest of mysteries. It's more just a spooky detour through a swamp as the gang pursues a witch and a zombie without much of an endgame in mind, but it's a fun romp that doesn't get dull.
I think you meddlers must be taught a lesson in witchcraft.
Things heat up when Daphne has seemingly disappeared, but she of course just had to have been standing on the one trap door in the witch's house.
So that's how it works.
Yeah, but then what happened to Daphne?
Instead of cutting their losses, the gang opts to instead rescue Daphne, who was held captive in a beached riverboat casino, long abandoned, which makes for another great location in the episode to add some variety and offer up some extra gags.
Toads and snails and puppy dog tails. That's what zombies are made of.
After escaping the riverboat by, boat, the gang discovers that it's pretty safe to say that the witch is a phony. How many real witches keep rubber versions of themselves lying around?
That's only a sheet painted with phosphorus to look like a witch.
Not only that, but the boat's anchor attaches to an armored car containing $1 million, which, you know, the gang could just take for themselves, you know, to make up for their fishing trip being a bust, but of course they insist on baiting the monsters while also being savage at the same time.
Here, Double Ugly, Go buy yourself a new face.
Dang! Through a convoluted trap, the zombie and witch are captured, and the gang meets up with the sheriff, who is actually the sheriff that appears in the first episode, One a Night for a Night. Like, seriously, it's the same guy. It says so on the series' model sheet of his character.
I gotta hand it to you, kids. Finding that missing armored car after all these years.
The zombie and witch are, big shocker, Zeb and Zeke. They stole the armored car and sunk it into the swamp while they hid out, which had to have happened years ago because they established themselves as the owners of swamps and general store in the meantime. They created the zombie and witch personas in an attempt to scare people away from these swamps so they could leisurely search the swamp for their missing treasure. It took them years of searching, but Scooby-Doo found it in a matter of hours. That's gotta be really depressing.
But where they're going, I don't think their disappearing act will ever work.
Scooby goes 2 for 2 defying the odds by somehow successfully fishing in a stagnant bucket of water.
That's one fish story no one will believe.
I kinda wonder how Zeb and Zeke decided who would be the witch and zombie. Did they, like, flip a coin or something? Or was Zeb just into dressing as a witch? It'd be nice if they had some closing statements on this instead of being silent. Which Witch is Which is a classic episode of Scooby-Doo Where Are You, based purely on the villains, atmosphere, and aesthetic of the swamp. It's a grand, spooky adventure that's lighter on mystery, but still makes for a fun watch. I give Which Witch is Which 5 boxes of Scooby snacks out of 5. Want more dude talking to me? I have a bonus commentary track of this episode I reviewed up on the Dr. Wolfula Patreon. Link in the description to join the Patreon and get some bonus content in return. Thanks for watching, see you next time. Jeepies. If you liked this video, like it, and if you loved it, click the subscribe and bell buttons for more vids. I'd also like to thank these fine folks pledged my shout-out tier on Patreon for all their kind support. Videos like this wouldn't be possible without all their help. Thank you for watching, see you next time. Dr. Wolfula signing out.